my baby, hello, my honey, hello, my ragtime gal. Send me a kiss by wire, baby, my heart's on.
All right, I'm down here at the Palace Station with Dan, Sara. Dan, when I used to come down here, he had something called the Colonel Bradley for kind of like a quick, abbreviated speed pace type thing. But who was Colonel Bradley? Remember who he was?
Oh, sure. Then Colonel Bradley was a legendary trainer from about 1915 to the 30s who won several Kentucky Derbies. He was an all-around guy.
He won 4 of them, didn't he?
Four
From
Derbies.
1921 to 1933, I believe.
Yeah, and of course the last one was the legendary race with Broker's Tip. But he was considered probably the greatest trainer of his era. And he also was well known for a lot of other things in areas.
Yeah,
of
he was.
life.
He was an owner. He was a breeder. He even owned. He bought what track was it? He bought Fairgrounds. Was it?
Yeah, he, as I say, and he also did other things outside of horse racing. But he would be the most prominent trainer, probably of that. Oh, say at least two decades back.
And I think in his wilder days, I know he went out west and he worked as a cowboy, and it was said that he even was a friend and knew Wyatt Earp out there.
Yeah, it would fit in the time frame, and he was a truly legendary guy, no question about it. That's how we came about one of our angles that we do in thoroughbred racing. There's a story, whether or not it has any validity or not, but it's a good story. The way it goes, in the Depression, the colonel, who was pretty much retired in the mid-30s.
How do you get the name Colonel, do you know?
Well, yeah, that's something that a friend of mine, as a matter of fact, Denny, you were the one who mentioned it to me, and what it was in Kentucky, it's sort of almost like being knighted. They have legendary people that they will bestow the honorary title of colonel on.
Oh, you're making me hungry now.
Yeah, Colonel Chip. But he did it all. But anyway, he would go to the racetrack pretty much every day in the Depression. And the way the story goes, there were a couple of young fellas who were at the track pretty much, and they weren't doing too much. And I doubt if they had much.
Was
money.
that Churchill or where was it?
I believe it was Churchill Downs. Yeah, that would be the main track in those days in Kentucky. And one of the fellas pointed out to his friend, "You see the older guy over there?" He said, "Yeah, that's the legendary Colonel Bradley. He won these Kentucky Derbies." And he said, the other fellow said, "Yeah, I noticed him, and it seems like he doesn't bet very often, but every time he bets, it seems like after the race he goes up and collects." He says, "Well, I want to ask him what he does." He says, "I don't know about that." So maybe one of the fellas gets a few drinks in him, and he goes up and he asks the colonel, he said, "We notice you," first he introduces himself and says it's an honor to meet you and all that. But he says, "We notice that you don't bet too often, but when you do, you seem to go and collect. Can you tell us maybe what it is you do?" He says, "Yeah, fellas, what I do is I find a horse who in his previous race, in a 6-furlong race, ran the last quarter of the mile, the last 2 furlongs, in under 24 seconds. He said, "Simple as that?" He says, "Yeah." Well, whether the story or not is totally true, we don't know, but I inculcated that in my work with a few of my little renovations and mini changes, and we do that now, and we try to play a horse who in his last race, if it was 6 furlongs, if he's going under a mile today, we want him to come home in less than 24. You're not going to get any $100 horses doing that, but you do get a pretty good percentage of winners. As I say, I've made a few little minor adjustments to the system, but we do very well with it, with a few rules. But again, you're not going to come up with incredibly high-priced horses, but you will get a nice percentage of horses that run first or second, and that's pretty much one of our 23, 24 angles and how it came about.
That makes a lot of sense because, Colonel Bradley was known to have a lot of speed-type pace numbers in the 20s. He probably used something, and that's kind of like maybe an abbreviated version of what he did.
Could very well be. I really was not that familiar with the Colonel as a handicapper and all of that, but I have been informed that he really was pretty good at things like that, and it certainly would make sense. And the best thing of all is if you can get a horse, what we call a front-running Colonel Bradley. That's a horse who goes out and sets the pace and still comes home in under 24 seconds. You're not going to get a big price horse with that, but you're getting an overwhelming percentage of horses who run first or second. And you do get quite a few of those in the New York traffic, in the New York circle, the Aqueduct, Belmont, and Saratoga. But that's really a high percentage angle.
All right, there you go, folks. That's our Colonel Bradley play from Dan Sara, the Palace Station.
I wanted to say to Elvis Presley and the country that this is a real, decent, fine boy.